welcome to the corner, Späti. I'm Ciarán. I'm with Rob today.
What's up, guys?
It's another one of these episodes where Nick and Julia are still not back.
Oh, you thought they were back? Oh, you thought wrong.
Yeah.
You're stuck with us.
They're actually in the room, but again, like last time, we've successfully silenced Julia for being a woman, and we've just edited Nick out.
Yeah. he's still talking right now about
Oh man, technology's amazing. Fucking hell. Yeah, so I guess we're going to talk about the Karl Marx anime at the end of this episode, but first let's talk about the fact that St. Patrick's Day just happened. If you're in Ireland, you have the day off today. Yeah, so I'm here to field questions about St. Patrick's Day.
I'm here to learn about the history of this wonderful holiday. Honestly, it should be a national holiday in the US, and I'm about 20% sure you could probably trick Trump into making it a national holiday by telling him the Irish were slaves, and then he'd be like, "Folks, we got to do something about this. We got the Irish oppressed too long. I'm declaring St. Patrick's Day a national holiday. Beautiful,
a federal holiday." Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's. If anyone's out there willing to work with the Republicans on making election day a holiday, that's probably a better strategy is get him to make St. Patrick's Day a federal holiday and then switch the voting day to the 17th of March.
Okay, well, all right, Ciarán, I want to ask you, what the fuck is St. Patrick's Day? Why does it matter?
All right, so the brief answer is it doesn't. It doesn't matter at fucking all. But what it is... Okay, most of the international depictions of St. Patrick's Day is from the Americans, the most hideous subgroup of Americans, which is the Irish Americans. Terrible mongrel people that need to be destroyed. In Ireland, it's a drinking day. You have a day off from work. It is like a national holiday. Most of the time, you just go to like a friend's house and get really drunk. Beyond that, nothing else happens. It has absolutely no political significance. It's a saint's day for anyone who's not like obsessively Catholic. Every day is a saint's day because there's a lot of fucking saints. But Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland. He's not Irish himself. He came from like Wales or France or something. Yeah. Because Patrick isn't an Irish name, it's a French name.
So Patrick really does represent the Irish Americans of just adopting the Irish culture from a different place.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, wait. So what's the story with he drove out the snakes of Ireland? So the snakes, I'm also like, I don't know if you saw this is breaking news on Twitter. J.K. Rowling said that, she's been updating Harry Potter to explain, he's been updating Harry Potter to give some more character. Dumbledore is actually gay.
Those have been book wild.
She just came out and said that Parseltongue, the evil language that the Slytherins speak, based on Irish.
Yeah.
And she's not wrong because Ireland was full of snakes before St. Patrick came and drove them out.
It's actually not in the European language. It's just snakes.
They're just hissing all the time. It's
oh, fucking Christ. Have you seen those? Some of those have been absolutely book wild. Did you see the tweet where she said there was no plumbing? Before plumbing in Hogwarts, they would just shit and piss on the floor and then use magic to get rid of it? It was an actual Pottermore tweet. It's gone off the fucking rails. And everyone was so curious. And then, it's endorsed by J.K. Rowling. That's actually canon.
Is Pottermore... Okay, I've heard the word Pottermore. I've never been there. I don't know how the forums are set up.
It's like a fan site,
I imagine it's like Genius. So Genius is the lyrics website.
Oh, Lyrics Genius.
And their new thing is to get so if it's a song, some rap song, they'll get the rapper to explain the lyrics, and then it's highlighted in green, so there's some background of it. I imagine Pottermore are just wild theories about what happens, and J.K. Rowling is in highlighted green, being like, yes, this is true. Yeah. They're just shitting, pissing everywhere.
Yeah, basically. Going back to St. Patrick's Day, for the Americans listening, it is comparable to 4th of July. It's the national holiday where the thing we're celebrating is Ireland.
Do you have fireworks?
No.
So
you drink.
Well, okay, well then that is a point. There's more that unites us and separates us, and at least everyone just gets really drunk on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. You get really drunk, you hang out with your friends, you stay out of town, like the city centre where the parade is happening, because that's not actually for Irish people, that's for tourists. It's not real.
Do people go to Ireland for St. Patrick's Day?
Yes,
Probably, yeah.
Huge thing. Flights skyrocket, which is unfortunate because my sister-in-law's birthday is on the 17th of March. And my wife has this nasty thing where she's like friends with her family and wants to see her on her birthday. But getting back into it, yeah, it's just like the main reason why this is our national holiday is because our actual national holiday is really controversial. Quote marks controversial. It happens. Ireland's fight for independence happened on Easter Sunday, which is a Catholic holiday for other reasons. And also, some people feel somewhat uncomfortable with the fact that Ireland won its independence via what modern critics would call terrorism. So, basically, a bunch of wimps turned St. Patrick's Day into our national holiday over, like, Easter Sunday. And now Easter Sunday is kind of only celebrated by, like, people in the army and blood and soil nationalists. It's also a great day to stay out of Dublin city centre.
I like the well, now I can offer a little bit of the American perspective, because St. Patrick's Day is very important important to Americans. And it's important because it's really one of the great pastimes of America, is to just like take another culture and just like ridiculously over the top appropriate it, do whatever you want, just use it as an excuse to drink a lot, just come up with like ridiculous things. I mean, now it's really like you'll see whatever, like Paul Ryan with the green tie being like, I'm Irish, da, da, da. But like, it's just an excuse. I like the idea, like you said, there's a saint for every day of the year.
Yeah, every day of the week, every day.
So like, since St. Patrick, like it like unlocks the ability for people to appropriate Irish people, that like every day of the year should be like a different appropriation day of a different culture for Americans. I think that would do a lot to healing the divides in America. I don't like, they already got Cinco de Mayo. That's big for drunk Americans, you know. You got St. Patrick's Day, but I think they need more. Chinese
New Year. That's kind of becoming a thing.
Could be. Yeah, true. People love their like a little paper mache dragon, and people are like, look at us doing the Chinese New Year.
And now Ciarán's just going to like rant about Irish Americans because they're terrible. I mean, that's just the central thesis.
Yeah, seconded. We hate Irish Americans.
Yeah, like this is a socialist podcast. All people are equal, despite our brocialist jokes. Women are equal, very pro-LGBT, anti-racism. It's all cornerstones of this. We are only racist against Irish Americans because they are terrible. Like a lot of things. Okay, corned beef. Don't know what the fuck that is.
Delicious.
Never eaten it before in my life. I've Googled it. It just looks like undercooked ham.
I would eat it like in school. People would do a project on Ireland, and it was just an excuse to eat corned beef and cabbage. I think I ate it exactly once a year for like a 10-year stretch.
I don't know what this is. Irish people don't know what corn is. We don't have it.
You know who does know what this is? My Facebook friends from my elementary school who post like really connecting to my culture, like 4-leaf clover and a photo of them in Ireland.
Fuck, first of all, it's called a shamrock. Stop calling it a 4-leaf clover.
So, someone sounds jealous that he's never found a 4-leaf clover. Sorry you don't have any luck.
Fucking Lucky Charms as well. That we don't get that in Ireland. What else? Yeah, so
Irish step dance, the great that's
no, it's called Irish dancing. I don't know what Irish step dance is. This is terrible. Also, you guys tend to call it Paddy's Day.
Yeah,
Paddy's Day.
Some people do. I don't. That sounds dumb, but that is something that happens.
This has genuinely caused legit problems in Ireland because we give our passports away to everyone. It's a big part of like our industry and our tourism. Most of our tourism is like Irish Americans having their like equivalent of like the kibbutz or whatever with the journey home the Jewish Americans do to Israel. It's basically what we do, is just get a bunch of like pale sacks of like shit to come back and experience Ireland or whatever the hell. And that's like our entire international reputation, because we gave them all passports because it's very easy to get an Irish passport.
Yeah, the Irish, it's like the Irish Oprah, like they don't give out cars or like other nice things. They're just like, everyone's there like, oh, what are we going to get today? And then it's the same thing. Passports.
Yeah. And it's so easy to get one. But like this has resulted in material
and
problems.
now data centers.
This has resulted in material problems because like I cannot, like, now that I live in Germany, I cannot do like a foreign vote. I can't vote for any Irish elections or referendums or anything like that because we do not want you to vote. You will ruin our country. You will genuinely destroy it. Ireland has managed to stave off like having like a horrifying right wing for now. But if we gave you guys the vote, you would totally bring it in. That was what would happen. And also, when speaking English, the language is called Irish. It's not called Gaelic. Stop calling it that.
But I don't know, you're making fun of Irish Americans, but I've never seen an Irish person change the color of a whole river. That's impressive.
Fuck off.
The Irish, they're not capable of such feats as just pouring a lot of food coloring into the Chicago River and turning it green.
Fuck you. Okay, yeah. Ireland is on 33% renewable energy, but yes, let's bow to that fucking great work.
Ireland is just like Delaware with a superiority complex. They just have a bunch of tax dodging data centers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if we want to talk about Ireland's modern industrial output, yeah, it's fucking horseshit. Like, I'm on board with that. But right now, from the perspective, yeah, it's when you're talking with other, like, if you're talking with other leftists and, like, other socialists and they come along with criticism of Bernie Sanders, you're like, I'm willing to have a reasonable discussion. But, like, when in the context of talking Irish Americans, here's Ciarán wearing a balaclava with an AK-47, just be like, with a Northern Irish accent, being like, hey, what the fuck are you talking about now? Would you feck off? And for anyone who didn't realize why I talk funny compared to the rest of the co-hosts, it is because I am Irish. Yes,
it's because Ciarán's really racist. He won't stop doing this accent. Nick and I keep telling him it's not funny anymore. Stop doing the accent, but he won't stop.
Ciarán, you're from Leipzig. Stop it.
Ciarán is from the same hometown as me. We grew up near Boston. We both have Dropkick Murphys.
At the national
we follow them everywhere. We have the Boondock Saints. We've memorized the whole movie. We quoted back and forth to each other. But Ciarán just went to Ireland one summer and now he won't stop doing the accent. We're gonna get past this.
Yeah.
Okay, just bear with us, listeners.
It's like one of those people who like summers in Barcelona and now they say Barcelona. Fuck off.
I do want to explain for people that, so if you don't know, the Chicago does just dye the river green and it does look cool. Like, wow, water's green now. Like, that's kind of strange, but like it reflects a very American, or I should say a very Chicago relationship to their river, because they just historically, when Chicago was like a booming, like, just full of slaughterhouses and just terrible working conditions and like living conditions, they just dumped all their pollution and sewage like into the river, and it was just everything. There was just, this is pure laissez-faire capitalism, no regulation. The problem with that was the river flowed into Lake Michigan, and this was the drinking water for Chicagoans, so people were getting sick. Now, this might cause some people to think, wow, pollution is a problem for our society. It doesn't, we have to do something about this. They don't stop the pollution. They reverse the flow of the Chicago River. So all the sewage just goes somewhere else and they can still keep drinking their drinking water. And dyeing the river green is like the modern version of that. They just abuse this poor river in whatever ways they want.
So that's Ciarán's partial tirade against Irish Americans, who I must stress have departed so far from the fucking stock, the original stock. Like, we were talking about, like, the woman, Devlin from Northern Ireland, who, when she was given the key of the city to Boston, I think it was, she gave it to the Black Panthers, because they were like, yeah. And then, like famous Irish Americans like Bill O'Reilly, Brett Kavanaugh, fucking Christ. And like the whole Irish slaves myth is just like, yeah, there was a lot of indentured servitude and like really shitty conditions in Ireland, but you're the fuckers who got out. Fuck off.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Happy Paddy's
It's
Day.
Irish Americans, I know you feel there's a lot of hatred against you. But this day's for you. No one can make fun of you on this day. St. Patrick's Day is your day.
Except for
Don't listen to Ciarán, it's your day.
I mean, it's like the Irish American tradition is partly no, it's distinct from like the Irish impact on like Germany, which I'm still finding very weird. They are horny for our butter. That is namely it. We make very good butter. They are horny for our beef as well, and we make very good beef, and we distinctly do not corn it. Whatever the fuck that means.
I thought you could explain to me. I don't know what the fuck
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I've never seen this before in my life. Do you know what we eat in Ireland? Steak. That's how we eat beef. But like, at the same time, German milk, fucking god awful.
Yeah.
Terrible swill. Absolute swill. They understand that we make good butter. They don't seem to understand we do that by having good fucking milk. And then I also love the like muck as like the suffix they use to indicate cheap. Like muck paper, which I think comes from McDonald's more than it comes from Ireland, to be fair. But like also McFit as well. Yeah. That just means son of. People realize that. It's like son of paper, son of fit.
That's great. I think McFit people would really like to know that they are like descended from the idea, the form of fitness.
From the concept of fitness.
That's, on the TVs at McFit that are always playing whatever, there's going to be somebody who discovered their heritage by learning about that. And right after it plays like a Bundeswehr advertisement.
Now that you're swole, why not join the army?
That's exactly what it is.
All right.
Wait, what is O? So Mick, you have Mick, and what's the O do? The O something
is grandson of.
Wow.
More accurately,
blowing my mind, man.
It's more accurately, it's the Irish word from.
Wow.
Yeah. Ireland used to have like what Iceland does, which is like we used to have like patronyms, where you were just named for your father. But then when the British came in and didn't understand the system, they kind of had to solidify. So like every like O name or Mac name is the part after the O or the Mac is a first name. Like O'Connell.
That makes sense. Yeah. Wow. You learn something new every day.
Also, I promised in one of the episodes that I will explain Irish orthography one day, but I'll wait for Nick to come back. It makes sense.
The only thing to take away from this is I'm speaking directly to Irish Americans. This is your culture. So go tell everybody what O'Brien means and what McConnell means. That's your culture to tell people.
Yeah.
You are the Irish. Embrace it. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
You were indentured servants. That is materially different from slave. If you had a child, it wasn't automatically an indentured servitude. This is an immaterial difference.
I know we joke about that, but did you see the Ralph Northam blackface thing? This governor of Virginia?
Yes.
But he did an interview like... Somehow he's okay. Some people pointed this out, but like the whole controversy happened, and everyone was calling on him to resign, and he just weathered the like. Now he's just still
very
there.
Curious about what the continuing thread here.
He just kept here, but no, he did an interview like okay, so it was finally dying down. Like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna storm. All these people telling me I'm racist for putting on blackface and taking photos with KKK hoods. I'm gonna get past it. And he does an interview, and he's talking about the history and like racism and slavery. And he says, yeah, in Virginia, we understand, I should get the exact quote, but it's like, Virginia, we understand this. We had so many indentured servants come to Virginia from many different countries, including Africa. And the interview was like, there were no indentured servants from Africa, and then he just kind of gets, but like, you just like, this is days after his big scandal, and he just brings it right back, man. You shout out Irish Americans. I don't even know if Ralph Northam's Irish American, but he has that Irish American. Sure he's an honorary Irish American. He gets invited to the St. Patrick's Day.
So it's the second most claimed white ethnicity, isn't it? It's like German and then Irish in the United States.
Yeah, because it's cool. You get corned beef and cabbage. You get to be racist. You get to do all kinds of cool stuff.
Back to the corned beef and cabbage thing. Like, I'll be the first to admit, Irish cuisine is absolute horseshit. Like, it is just taking these ingredients that we put all this love and care into growing it or raising it, and then how do we cook it? We boil it for 7 hours. Like that is what most Irish cuisine is. But I don't fucking know what corned beef is. I don't. And also, modern Irish cuisine, that's good shit. Spice bags. Look it up. Everyone get a spice bag.
I don't know what that is. I just know Irish American excellence, like becoming a police officer.
That was the problem. You all became cops.
Covering up like tons of crimes, being racist, drinking a lot on St. Patrick's Day. Beautiful culture. We love you. I love my hometown.
God damn it. All right, let's move on to our main topic. We talked about that for like way too long.
We're not done with this. Oh, this is a little sneak preview. I'm saying it on the air so that Ciarán cannot back out of it. Fuck. We will be watching the Boondock Saints with Ciarán. We're going to watch the whole thing. We're going to talk about it. We might live stream it and just so you can get his reaction. It's going to be great.
I did see a clip where an Irish person is being played by a distinctly Scottish actor, Billy Connolly. So looking forward to that. Willem Dafoe is involved somehow. Don't really know how. But anyway, our main topic this evening is the wonderful piece of possibly Chinese propaganda, the Karl Marx anime.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's we just finished watching it. It's very informative. So I'm not the anime expert here. I'm gonna let Ciarán do the talking on that.
I am the anime expert.
I wouldn't not call myself a Marxist expert, but everything from what I know, it's very accurate. I mean, it goes through, it gives you all the hits. Mm-hmm. You know, it really plays to the crowd. You're sort of like, oh, I know what's coming up next. It
has that moment where Carl and Deng hang out for a bit and they're like, hey, Dengist reforms, am I right?
Like, oh, Weitling's going to say something dumb. They're going to have a fight. So, you know, it's good fun. It definitely plays to the cheap seats. Yeah, I forgot about the bread. Sorry,
that's fucking bread.
We're going to jump all over the place with this. All right, who's going to explain it? You.
So I'm going to preface this by saying that we did record an episode before of us talking about this with Nick, with Yulia, before they left to go to China. And
we did delete it because they were too smart and made us look dumb, so we deleted it.
Yeah.
Now we're recording over them.
We thought it was a good episode. When we listened back, we were just like, it was just us chanting, we must uphold Xi Jinping thought over and over again. We must have just blacked out.
This is like when you're a kid and your brother, like his save file in Super Mario 64, like he has more stars than you, so you just delete it. And then you're like, wow, now my two, like,
that's
he had 94.
Family life.
now my 2 stars, now I'm winning.
All right. What this actually is it's a quote-unquote anime. A lot of debates on whether it can be an anime unless it comes from Japan, which this didn't. It came from China.
You're listening to the Anime Phrenologist.
That is my current handle on Twitter. I might change it soon. The origin of that is very dumb as a title, but still. Anyway, this was made with the backing of the Chinese government because of the 100-year anniversary of the release of Das Kapital. Was that what it was? It's 100. No. It was 100-year anniversary of something to do with Marx. It was a Communist Manifesto.
It was his 200th birthday.
200th birthday.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
That was last year.
Yeah, 200th birthday late last year. This is when this was released, and it's a big part of a supposed media push in China to get the young kids into Marx. Because the young kids in China are, in Chinese politics, they're described as being more liberal, which means market liberal. As in, they're more into their free market politics. whereas the like rural and more older population in China has been described as more like quote unquote hardcore Marxist.
Yeah, cooler.
Yeah. It's debatable. I don't know. They might
If you never killed a landlord, you are not cool.
Yeah, okay. There's also like weird. China's an enigma. I don't understand China 100%. I don't speak Chinese. And there's like all these like student movements in China that get like oppressed for being too actually Marxist.
Yeah. The one good thing, like, the New York Times is like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's basically a certain kind of like neoliberal state propaganda. So like, you're not going to get much of a good analysis of most things the US does. But when like some movement happens, like they do report, they do give good information on like the like Marxist reading group or student group being like censored at the university in Beijing because it's against, you know, the US enemies. And so then they're like, oh, we love like owned by your own logic, the communists, like you're oppressing them.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do get some information like that.
Yeah. And there's some interesting stuff in this that we can probably talk about in relation to the context which was made. But the actual anime itself is a 7-episode miniseries that was released online in China and you can...
On Billy? I don't know how to say it.
Yeah,
but
I'm not... I think that's the network.
That's Mandarin for Dilly Dilly, the dumb Bud Light ad. They're trying to, you know, they saw how popular that was. Yeah. They watched the Super Bowl.
Is this one of those competing transliteration things? Fuck, it's so dumb.
It's so dumb. That's like I said, Irish American excellence.
Yeah. Saying
dilly dilly is that's the D word for Irish Americans. You're not allowed to say that.
Oh, right, of course. Sorry. Yeah, so it was released online, 7-episode mini-series. It for our true anime fans out there, I will warn you, it is that bullshit 3D anime like fucking hate. Which was annoying because when they originally advertised this, they did like do a fully traditionally animated ad for this show, and there's some scenes that are like traditionally animated, but then we have it on here in the background and it's doing some bullshit 3D cutscene in a terrible dating sim video game.
It does look like
it looks like a Marx and Engels dating sim.
Yeah, like a video game that's like in some, the graphics are like, maybe there's some new graphic advance, but the video game designers don't know how to really implement it well. They're just like, let's try to do this.
Some cutting edge technology.
That's just kind of thrown in there.
Yeah. It does have, it is very reminiscent of some cheap ass Japanese video games I've played. That like the translation wasn't very good. But yeah, made in China, with the backing or the consent of the government, because China doesn't really work like that. It's not like a state-owned operation. This was like a private quote-unquote animation company, but like it got through the censors.
Yeah, Nick knew some stuff about this, so he's not here.
Yeah.
But I mean, the people who made it, and this is clearly reflected in it, are very well-read Marxists. I mean, there's a lot of lecturing in this anime. It's not a stretch to just say it's like a glorified like lecture about
it is edutainment,
about philosophy, about Kant, about Hegel, about all of Marx's fights, about capital.
It is. I think it's more so history rather than anything, because it is chronological in its discussion. It starts with him in college, in his first college, which I don't know which one that was.
In Bonn,
Bonn, and then ends with his death.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like the end of every episode is his death, which was, there's a lot of like Marx's life. You see him dying a lot because the end of every episode, it's like a movie reel, and it goes through the most important events in Marx's life, and it ends with him and with Marx and Engels like handshaking and fading to white, and then it like settles into Tiananmen Square with a beautiful flag waving and Mao's portrait.
There's this motif in the anime of like dandelion seeds, which this might be like a either Chinese communist rhetoric or a Chinese language metaphor that we're not getting, but like the idea of communism spreading to China from its humble beginnings in Prussia or whatever the fuck what we call Germany nowadays. And yeah, they kind of signify that with like a dandelion seed flying off to the distance. So the intro of this anime is Jenny von what?
Westphalen or something. I don't know.
Jenny. She blows dandelion seeds, and then the end of the ending credits is the dandelion seed landing in Tiananmen Square with the Chinese. I can't remember the name of that palace because Tiananmen Palace probably or something like that. But yeah, with the Chinese 5-star flag flying and all that.
I can't speak for Ciarán, but I did not get that at all. We were watching it in our first recording, and Yulia's like, yeah, you see, it's like the dandelion like lands, like it leaves, Marx like spreads his seed out into the world, and one of the places it lands is China, and I'm like, damn, I should read more books.
Yeah, there's also a dove metaphor thing happening.
There's a lot of flying, like coasting,
again,
a lot of like shots from above.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is just like Chinese language, communist rhetoric constantly mentions like the spread of communism via dandelion seeds as a metaphor. This might be something that we're not privy to. But
please email Ciarán and lecture him about the Chinese Communist Party's rhetoric, and then he will make corrections and apologies in the next episode.
The next episode I'm back is like, guys, I'm a dingus now. Market liberalization was the only way forward. But yeah.
Well, I mean, we've touched upon it, but that's something everyone's going to ask. Like, is it propaganda? How much of it is like the Chinese government saying what they want? I will say that they certainly don't cut any corners in terms of the actual Marxist thought. I mean, there's a pretty prominent scene, I want to say in the second episode, where it portrays the true historical fact of Marxist struggles with Prussian censorship.
Yeah.
Because he's writing for different magazines and he's getting censored by the Prussian government. And it goes through and he shows his frustration with tons of different censors. And on Bilibili, you can see, shout out to the Twitter user who was like translating comments.
Yeah.
They made a whole thread of like translating comments.
It's called jazz-ish.
Yeah, about the anime. And they pointed out that like during those scenes, everyone's laughing like, it's just like the government against the Marxist reading group at the Beijing University and stuff like that. So it's not being, it's there, you know, and they certainly don't gloss over that.
Yeah, a lot of this is like the censorship in China kind of works in a sense of like self-censorship to a certain extent. Like you know what the criteria is, and you as like a filmmaker or a cartoonist or whatever you're probably not going to try. You know what you have to do to get it past the censors. So there are things like it's hard to tell without really understanding the full context of like this animation studio, the people behind it, what their personal beliefs are, how much of this was like the Chinese censors thought this would be a good idea to show, or how much of this was like, let's see how much we can push this kind of thing. Because you can also look at it from the perspective of like China being like, see, other places censor too. It's not just,
true, maybe.
Or they could have gotten away with it because it was like purely historical fact, and they can say that this happened there, but it doesn't happen now. Whatever, they can make that kind of claim, because there are things they do focus on that are like, I definitely feel like are the Chinese government, or like maybe not Chinese government's the wrong way of putting it, but like a Chinese perspective. Like they definitely overemphasize in like some of the early episodes the atheism aspect. Which again is what Marx thought, and those are the fights he had, but they just made it's certainly overly pointed out. Good propaganda isn't lying, it's emphasizing certain truths and ignoring others. Things they do ignore is they don't really talk about how Carl was a big old drunk. Going back to the first episode, like he has like a Goodwill Hunting scene, shout out Irish American excellence. Where how about these apples moment, where he like owns there's like nobility who's like yelling at his friend for like talking to these girls at some bar in Bonn, and Marx owns him with logic because he knows Kant better than them, and then buys everyone at the bar drinks. And then it cuts from Marx, you know, like very soberly sipping a beer to his home, where he just has like stacks and stacks of like bar receipts, and his dad barges in and is like, you're like spending way too much money. I'm sending you to Berlin. But they made it seem like he just
you know, when you just own people with logic so much, you just have to buy them beer, like, and buy them drinks. Like, it's not Marx's fault. He wasn't just getting in duels and like drinking all the time.
That would be so much nicer if Ben Shapiro did that. Like, every time he just lectures at college SJW, the entire auditorium gets a shot.
Yeah.
Other aspects.
Well, then I think everyone would be puking pretty quickly.
God damn it, another shot, I guess. The other thing, like everything that's kind of been like erased or like not really talked about is more a character critique of Carl, like his drinking. And the other thing they definitely don't mention, because it just came up on screen, they mention Carl's maid / the help, Helen DeMuth. They don't really talk about the fact that he knocked her up.
Yeah, well, they don't say it at all.
No, they don't.
Yeah, she kind of disappears from
the anime.
From the anime, yeah.
Yeah, because like anything that was like a critique of Carl as a character is not really included.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they have, I think Karl Marx is famous for being quite, I don't know, argumentative is the right way to put it. But he, you know, he was outspoken, as you got to be. You know, he made it out of the hustle of the young Hegelian German idealists to rise to the top. But that's certainly portrayed in terms of he's arguing with people, but it's all about his driving spirit and his belief in revolution, which I agree. I think that's probably who he was. I can sympathize with him. Yeah,
like I think it's important to say that like this is a weird, from our perspective, it's a weird position to take, but like this might be just like a Chinese puritanical kind of thing. But like the fact that he was a fucking drunk horn dog who was probably just a nightmare to speak to as a person doesn't really like dismiss his ideas or what he wrote about. I think the only thing that I probably could point to, because I did a little bit of research on this, is their depiction of the 1872 Hague Congress, which is in the second last episode.
You're listening to Anarchist Radio, 100% uncensored. The truth they don't want you to know about Karl Marx.
Yeah. We're reporting here from so-called Germany.
That's just normal, good anti-Deutsch, like just like. But this is a side point. But in Germany, they never refer to it as Deutschland. It's always just like, a lot of times they'll say BD, like Bundesrepublik, like the Bundesrepublik, but they don't say Deutschland, because then it's like giving credence to this German land, especially with the reunification, you know? Right. So yeah, so-called Germany, that's where we are.
Yeah, fair enough. That's usually in actual anarchist radio, they usually refer to settler colonial nations as so-called Canada, so-called United States, so-called Australia.
That's sick.
Yeah, that is sick.
I second that, yeah.
Yeah, the anarchists are fucking cool. But
the United States, the so-called United States, what it should be called is the glorious land of Irish Americans, the rightful owners of all this land.
The original ethnicity.
You know, what do the Palestinians sing from the river to the sea? They say that, but it's all green.
I'm trying to, like, this would be such a dumb joke, but I'm trying to translate, we didn't land at Plymouth Rock landed on us, but in Irish. TH sound isn't really in Irish. Plymouth would be hard. But this is like the only example I can really think of, like, apart from the atheism thing being like really pronounced, because
there's a moment where they just spontaneously talk about self-crit, which is cool.
Oh yeah. They talk a lot about self-criticism, which anyone doesn't know, that's like a big part of Maoism, Maoist thought. Yeah. It's not really clear. I didn't really look up the history of that, or like Engels' new preface to the republishing of like the Communist Manifesto. But the other thing that I thought was probably particularly ideological, or like government interference or a Chinese interpretation, is the 1872 Hague Congress, where like the Internationale splits along anarchist and Marxist lines, where like before that the Internationale was a broad socialist umbrella grouping, but then in the way the anime depicts it is like Marx gets into like a fucking boss fight with Bakunin.
They play literal boss battle music.
Yeah.
Like while Bakunin's talking.
Yeah, and then like Buchanan's like, the state is the problem. You can't really have like they talk
immediate violent overthrow. Like he talks about that too.
Yeah, he
sort of like, I mean, he emphasizes the immediacy rather than like the material conditions. That's the implication.
Immediacy. He criticizes Karl for wanting to use the state. And those are like true criticisms that like Buchanan had of Marx.
Those are real criticisms of Karl Marx. That's the truth here on Anarchist Radio.
I listen to way too many anarchist podcasts to feel not personally attacked. But
this is literally the voice in Ciarán's head all the time.
It's not untrue.
It's between Anarchist Radio and Irish Americans.
This is getting very Alex Jones. But the thing that he like brought up that wasn't really true is like Buchanan's obsession with like individual freedom. That's more like a sterner anarchist thing. But the thing about like why this isn't true. Oh yeah. Anyway, like Marx is like, we should get rid of Buchanan. Who agrees? Everyone puts up their hand. But Buchanan makes like a point about using the state is wrong. Like no one agrees. So here's what I found out of the actual Hague Congress. Buchanan wasn't there. He was exiled. Like they talked about Buchanan, and another anarchist was there who doesn't have his own Wikipedia page. He's just called James something. James Guillaume, like that's a French name. Guillaume, probably. He was there, and both him and Buchanan were exiled. But Buchanan was exiled in like absence, like you're not invited to any more meetings, kind of thing. You're not allowed. And at the same time, when the anarchists split and made their own international, which is called the Saint Emer International, which they held a couple of days later, most of the people at the Hague Congress left with them. Like there was like popular support for this.
Yeah.
So that I felt like was a very ideological thing by like Chinese government, because say what you will about like what actual what actual Marxists want in a society, and what I've learned from speaking to a lot of Marxists is there's a lot more overlap than especially like petty online fighting will like lead you to believe between anarchists and Marxists. But anarchist critiques of Marxism would definitely apply to the current state of China. Like, you have to recognize anarchism is probably a very real ideological threat to an analysis of modern day China.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know what the anarchist movement is like in China. I mean, I understand officially non-existent, but I don't know what popular I don't know, just ideas might be connected to it. I don't know. Definitely. From my understanding and research of it is it exists, but basically out of fear cannot organize, like, or in any public way. Just like the Irish Americans. The most oppressed people. A lot of overlap. I mean, actually, the second episode of this anime does depict, like, the predominantly Irish people who are in terrible working conditions in like Manchester. Yeah, true. The Irish Mancunians, the first Irish Americans. Okay, should we actually go through more of how the series progresses? I think that's the end of the whole question of like what Chinese influence do we see on this. I think that's the end of it. Other than like the last episode, the credits of the show kind of like show how the Marxist tradition has continued, and they bring up like Deng and they bring up Xi Jinping and Chinese characteristics, while they replace what had been in the outro throughout the entire series is like animated scenes through Marx's life. Yeah. With him walking in front of them. They replace that with like photo and illustration and video footage of like moments in like Soviet Union and Maoist China history. Yeah. This is the like very last episode. It's like it's an extended outro. Yes, and they also like continue that with like people in modern China like getting along and living in a perfect society and reading books about Marx. Yeah. And they like show what I'm assuming is maybe a famous monument, maybe not, like a bust of Karl Marx somewhere in China. Yeah, I busted.
Jokes.
Actually, it was really sad the last episode. We're gonna get to it, but
Yeah.
like the first 3 episodes of the series are just like Marx just like doing battle, like owning people with logic.
Yeah.
And then the start of the 4th episode, I want to say, or the 5th, is just like his son dying, and they're just really sad and poor. And it's like, wow, like it really goes from 0 to 100 in terms of like lecturing you or just being really, really sad in this anime. It was a little bit of a whiplash for me.
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? Because it does. The show kind of changes from. It kind of switches gears a couple of times to being Marx and Engels just like talking at you about like praxis and good thought and whatever to the supposed biography of Marx's life. And the biography they've chosen to focus on is kind of this like love story between him and
Engels.
Yeah, they intended Jenny, but it really does look like Marx and Engels.
We should shout it out. It's a very romantic. I mean, all right, back up. Marx and Engels in real life, absolute 10 out of 10s, beautiful men.
Yeah,
in the anime too, gorgeous,
absolute beautiful fucking
hunks.
Thoughts.
And you know the Billy. This did not pass the Billy commenters. They were very excited to see Marx and Engels, and very excited to ship Marx and Engels. There are a lot of very close scenes between them. They, you know, just imagine finding your intellectual companion in life. They're very excited. They're holding hands. They speak very excitedly at each other. It's really beautiful, very touching.
It's worth pointing out that like they kind of like in a typical cartoon way, they kind of beautify everyone. Because like when I was looking up the Hague Congress thing, I saw the actual photo of Buchanan. Buchanan was a dog. Like, I think he's like, to be fair, I think he was genuinely scarred by some sort of disease or something. But
well, as was Marx. Like, he had these like boils and skin problems, but he's just like, even when he's older in the anime, he's just getting around well. He's good. He's just looking good, thick.
But yeah,
juicy.
Like they genuinely made the 3 main characters, who are Carl, Engels, and Jenny, who was caught by Engels.
There is one scene where where I think it's the 3rd episode where they meet. You know, they have the meeting where they almost miss each other because Engels introduces himself as a young Hegelian, and Marx is like, I hate the young Hegelians. Yeah. And then they meet again in a cafe and then realize they talk all night and they finish each other's sentences.
Yeah,
and then he leaves and then he comes back. Oh, he knocks on the door and Jenny answers, and then Jenny's like, who are you? And Jenny's like, oh, you must be like Engels. I've heard so much about you. And then it cuts and you see Marx like run down the stairs and like slide into frame, and he just looks so happy. I'm so happy for Carl.
Yeah, like that's actually like it is literally that meme. Get you a man who looks at you like Carl looks at Engels, because he's never as happy to see Jenny.
They do. Okay, so I guess we should talk about Jenny's role in this. First thing to note. She wears the same clothes for the first 5 episodes. She just has this pink dress on, you know, looking good, Jenny, but like she just doesn't change for like 40 years of time that goes by. That's interesting.
The other thing is like the whole flip-flopping of the plots thing is like, I feel like the 6th episode is like the end of like Marx. It's like the end of the show's depiction of Marx as like a cultural, economic, and political thinker. Because the 7th episode, the finale, is very much just like his wife dying, him dying, Karl Liebknecht being there and very concerned about him dying.
William Liebknecht.
Sorry,
he's an anarchist. Sorry, it's okay.
And yeah, that's like it's fucking interesting. I'm trying to think of other like weird. Sorry, I'm trying to think of other like weird anime moments. Like the depiction of Europe as like, or no, more accurately, the depiction of Europeans as just like eating loaves of bread constantly. Giant, like, imagine if someone imagine a real life Photoshop came along to a brioche bun and then made it 4 times the size with like the scaling tool. And then we're all just chowing down on that. I was like, oh, those crazy Europeans.
There's a wonderful scene in the first episode where Marx is at Bonn learning about Kant, and he's like, yeah. And then he has to switch to Berlin because he's drinking too much. And there's a scene where
Berlin, a famously sober city.
Yeah, Marx, he stops drinking. He starts doing ketamine.
It was a purer way to be.
He starts
be on horse tracks.
He's going to his friends' pop-up vintage sales and DJ shows.
Oh God.
He's advertising for Carcel clothing.
We live in a trash city, folks.
Yeah. So he moves to Berlin, and and there's just a beautiful moment where he sees the like Hegel lectures, but then Hegel's so complicated, confusing. He's trying to understand it, and he's sick in bed. He doesn't say he's sick. He just says afterwards, like, "Oh, you're feeling better." But he's like sweating, and the time's going by like a montage, and he's reading Hegel, really trying to understand it. And then he's just sitting in bed and just like takes a bite out of a huge loaf of bread. Like, this is the only food you see in the whole episode. It's just him, just huge bite out of the bread, and that gives him the energy to understand Hegel.
Yeah, there's also other weird moments. Like, that's kind of weird. Him in bed, chomping on an entire loaf of bread. But to be honest, as Europeans, who hasn't done that? The fun thing, though, is like when he's encountering a beggar in the cafe, and instead of giving him like money, he just pulls out a loaf of bread from his pocket that we had not seen before this moment, just shoves it in his hand.
I keep that motherfucking thing on me. Pulls his coat aside. He does, this is a good segue, he does, Marx is an absolute G when one of the Prussian censors comes to the office, and he just like he just pulls his coat aside and shows his gun, and it's like, and he's like, well, it was something like he still has to close down, and they're like, close right now, and he's like, by law we have 3 days, and he like separates his coat and like ready to shoot. He's like, I'm like, damn,
this is the Prussian standard.
I love you, Carl. There was even a foreshadowing of that, because Jenny was like at the beginning of the episode was like, we don't have enough money for food because you bought another pistol. Just imagining Marx just like loading up on guns, not buying any food.
Not buying those sweet, delicious, giant brioche buns.
Yeah, but about Jenny, I will say that the first episode, the last episode, and parts in between, it does focus on this like love story between them a lot. What they talk about, Jenny is like very supportive, I mean, throughout.
Yeah.
And which is true. She even like transcribed Marx's notes because Marx's handwriting was impossible to read. But I do think they portray her a little bit like, just as like, always like, she sacrificed so much to give Carl like the ability to be with him. I mean, they say in the last episode, like, yeah, you could have, I mean, she's from a noble family.
Yeah.
She could have had, like, the house they live in is smaller than the smallest room in her fucking family palace.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows her as like being sort of like an obedient, I don't know.
Yeah, again, it's that kind of
companion.
It's a puritanical streak. That's
and
kind of like
I think she did have more, like, I don't know all of her theory, but she did contribute more to socialist theory and understanding than people think. I mean, there are a couple of scenes. The more I think about it, the more I think it's a relatively, they did try to cover all the bases, but there are some scenes where she's there at the table arguing too and asking them about their writing and like bringing up some points. But on the whole, she's kind of like, I don't know, docile, I guess, compared to Marx, who's just yelling, lecturing all the time.
It's not exactly what we would consider a very woke depiction of a woman.
Yeah, but they show Marx being very like loving and even doting, I would say, like very much like caring for
the
her.
Anime Marx is definitely an improvement in terms of relationship with his wife than on the real life Marx, for sure. I think it's also just like a little bit of a last kind of like anime quirk thing to bring up. Every episode ends with a rap.
Yeah,
Chinese
the rap is sick.
Continuing the tradition of the polka rap from the Pokemon series. Like, it's just gotta catch them all, but they just it's gotta seize them all, and it's just various means of production.
No, the real Marxist poker rap would be like listing all of the revolutions really quickly. Like,
oh god. If I was more confident in my rapping ability, I'd try that right now. But also, I have shit historical knowledge as well, so that's why I'm not doing it.
Yeah, so are there any other maybe favorite moments you wanted to shout out? We've touched on some of them.
I mean, myself, no. It was just a like absurd show throughout. I enjoyed it's kind of enjoyable. Like I definitely see this is going to be like the Chinese equivalent of just like your teacher comes in one day at work hungover and is like, instead of rolling on fucking Harry Potter or whatever the fuck you're allowed to watch. Or, like I always got like BBC animal documentaries. The Chinese kids are getting this.
Yeah, like, and I have to say this is way fucking better than Schoolhouse Rock. Like Schoolhouse Rock, drowned in ideology. They think being a bill and whatever this all matters. This actually good Marxist theory. They tell you what Marx thought, and the Kantian and Hegelian philosophy in the first episode, very complicated, very confusing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot going on here. So I have to say, just on that front, like, there's a lot of good edutainment going on in here. One of my favorite moments was there's, I think in the 6th episode, this guy shows up and says he's a reporter from The Atlantic.
Yeah.
And so The Atlantic did exist. They actually shouted out, Marx shouted out Lincoln. That was another one of my favorite moments in that same episode. The like reactionary slave owners got him, which is like, yeah, shout out Lincoln. Shout out revolutionary moments in U.S. history that are kind of not portrayed as such.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this off camera, but like Lincoln is still kind of like widely like was still well regarded in like Cuba as an example, as like a revolutionary figure within America, and the like people who went to fought for the Marxists and anarchists in revolutionary Spain were like the Americans who went to fight were called the Lincoln Brigade. He's like got this weird left tradition.
Yeah, the thing is, and this is something I would maybe like to get more into at another point, but we're gonna go. It's a little off topic to go into now, but Lincoln, I think he's kind of recognized as like, oh, one of the great presidents, but that's kind of like a defanged version.
Yeah.
In his actual policy, it was quite measured. I think people point that out, like the Emancipation Proclamation, which only freed the slaves in the South. There were 4 slave states that remained with the Union, and slavery was still legal there.
Yeah.
Like, so stuff like that is clear. Where Lincoln was really revolutionary was as commander-in-chief and as a general, like telling Sherman to go just burn it down, tear up the railroads, give all the slaves guns, and go to the next plantation. Like, that's legitimately revolutionary. When you look at like what Haiti had to pay France for how many years, damages for freeing themselves, you know? Whereas in this, that didn't happen. They just burned it down and like were freeing people. So that was like a revolutionary moment. A lot of that is the radical Republicans and different movements beyond Lincoln. But as the head of the army, I'm happy Marx shouts him out. And in real life, he did too. Marx wrote a letter to Lincoln.
Yeah, I feel like as if you asked me to pick one U.S. president, that might be the one to pick.
Absolutely, hands down. The rest fucking suck.
Fair enough.
But so the Atlantic did exist back then, to go back to the Atlantic. But it's just hilarious to imagine like one of the like absolute fucking running dogs of empire. I say that without any trace of like irony. From the Atlantic today, like going and asking Marx, like Jesse Single, whatever his name is, like
Rob's not a fan of the modern Atlantic guys.
But what about trans people? Like Marx is like just ignoring him. It is pretty badass because the last thing, it's the last moment of the 6th episode, and he says something like, what does he say? Why don't people read Capital? Or like what it matters.
Are you concerned about the low sales?
But Marx's response to something is just like, or like what needs to be done, and Marx is just like struggle, and I'm like, yeah, damn right. Yeah, the Atlantic, Chapo covers it well. We can't get into it now. It is just it is like the Truman Show for a lot of U.S. media is. It's just the Truman Show for like well-to-do bougie liberals in the U.S. and the fact that it gives them this veneer of like a debate of all these like different voices in the U.S. So you can read like Connor Frieserdorf about how, you know, socialism is bad for minorities and other hits like that. But it's a very neoconservative agenda. It's basically mirrors the dream neoliberal American empire in that you don't question anything going on outside of the U.S. And it gives you this like illusory range of like debate within among domestic affairs.
Was it the guy who's like, is the editor or the owner who's like a big like Iraq war?
The editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg. He's a big, Listen to Chapo episode 200. They do a good job.
Fair enough.
Talking about that.
We're here talking about Europe and China's depiction of it.
What about other series that China could do like this? Anything, or anybody in general? What do you want to see to get the anime treatment?
The serious answer to this is I would like something like this. First of all, better fucking animated. But also maybe like broader socialist thing, like an episode per socialist thinker. The joke answer is I want an anime version of Ayn Rand.
I did come up with like in terms of like edutainment, like I'm trying to imagine like PragerU watching this and being like, wow, they're like updating they're updating their thought for like the kids. Like they listen to this like pretty cheesy like rap pop song and they're like, that's just too cool, how do we come up with it? And then the PragerU hires someone to make an anime about Atlas Shrugged, but to like update it for the youth, they call it Atlas Snapped. I think the idea of just like a really bog standard PragerU video being hosted by Dennis Prager, and he's floss dancing the entire time. Let's talk about how Democrats are the real racists. Well, I mean, it does show like at risk of repeating myself, there's good Marxist theory in this. It explains it well. It's inspiring. Marx and Engels, like they are in love. I ship them. I hope the CPC thinks they fucked. I agree. And it does like this. We didn't talk about Young Tom, but we're not going to get into that. There's just a little.
We do not ship Karl Marx and Young Tom. We are not libertarians. Young Tom is too young.
The Chinese government just invented a character for a woke toddler for Marx to explain Marxism too, but he doesn't have to explain because the woke toddler just gets it. Yeah. That's the real horseshoe theory that like Chinese government and like bougie liberals both believe in woke toddlers. Making tweets. Xi Jinping making a tweet about like a woke toddler understanding why they had to censor the Tiananmen Square massacre. But yeah, there is like it does. So like when Young Tom is like talking to the other soldiers at the Paris Commune, and then Marx is like talking in the background, like mimicking his voices. Yeah. So it really gives you the idea that, you know, Marx's spirit lives on in his words and in his deeds and in Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is like, he's like Kanye West during the Sway interview. He's like, I am Marx. I am Engels. Soviet Union. Anti-revisionism. I need the Chinese people to allow me to create my art. My animes.
Yeah. To implement these Chinese characteristics. But yeah, it's a fine watch. There are better animes. I mean, most animes, like half of all animes are just like fash. But that's a real problem. But yeah, I don't know. There are better animes, but there are no better theorists. Read your Marx, kids. Read your Marx. The original Naruto. Yeah, you know, I thought it was kind of like a little intellectual materialism. Believe it. After they expelled Bakunin from the First International, Marx does the floss dance on him. No, I do like the only thing I can genuinely recommend in anime is anime cyberpunk. It's still a critique of capitalism over there. Unlike Western cyberpunk, which is just like, ooh, look at me wearing a duster. Ooh, I'm going to hack into this mainframe. You were doing, I know you're sitting, but you were doing the Theresa May walk of the cyberpunk. Theresa May in a duster. Let's do it. I'm on board with this Brexit. She just puts on some shades and that like heavy bass riff from the Matrix plays. She's wearing the goggles and the like the hood. Cyberpunk, you've
That is-
lost your way.
That's what the EU is holding your UK back. They're not letting the UK be cyberpunk.
They're like, no, diesel punk
That's
is better.
steampunk I'm thinking of with the goggles.
Yeah, you are thinking of steampunk.
But you know, the UK has to go back to its roots. They did the work with the Industrial Revolution. You know, they colonized the Irish, made all of them all work. They deserve to, much like the Irish Americans deserve to embrace their heritage and dye the river green. The UK should, you know, they should have steampunk day.
There is definitely some sort
Theresa
of...
May's going to be wearing the goggles.
There's definitely like a UKIP councillor or a pro-Brexit Tory councillor who's just like, after a no deal Brexit, it'll be totally fine. We'll just be Zeppelins in the sky with twirly mustache and monocle. Get Tesla on the phone. What? He's dead. Yeah. So I think that's gonna do it for us here.
That's all we have.
That's all we have. Join us next time. Nick and Yulia will be back. I might be gone though. But you know, on all seriousness, shout out to Melty Brains for the use of the theme song New Dawn. It's a classic banger of a hit. They are like a weird jazzy experimental Irish band. Check them out on SoundCloud, Spotify, all that good shit. Melty Brains. Get on that. Yeah, that's gonna do it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, see ya.
Peace.